My ex-wife mailed me a key 6 years after the divorce. No note, no return address. And it took me 3 days to figure out what it opened. My name is Daniel Carver. I'm 38 years old, a project manager from Ohio. And for 9 years I was married to a woman named Whitney. The woman I thought I knew better than anyone on this earth. When she signed those divorce papers 6 years ago, she walked out of my life in complete silence. No goodbye, no explanation, nothing. I told myself I'd made peace with it. But last Tuesday, a small padded envelope showed up in my mailbox, postmarked from a town in Vermont I'd never heard of. No note inside, no return address on the outside. Just one old brass key wrapped in tissue paper, with a faded tag in handwriting I hadn't seen in 6 years but recognized instantly. I spent 3 days chasing what that key opened. 3 days of dead ends, wrong guesses, and a phone call that made my hands shake. And when I finally turned that key in the lock, 11 hours from home, what I found inside broke me in a way the divorce never did. Why would my ex-wife mail me a key after 6 years of total silence? Why no note, not even a single word? And what was she hiding behind that lock that she couldn't bear to tell me to my face, but couldn't let me live without knowing? Stay with me, because the answer changed everything I believed about why our marriage really ended. It was raining the day it came. I remember that because the corners of the envelope were soft and damp, and the postmark had started to bleed into a gray smudge. I stood at my mailbox in the drizzle, turning the little package over in my hands, looking for a name that wasn't there. Inside my kitchen, I slid it open with my thumb. Something slid out and landed on the counter with a small cold clink, the loneliest sound I'd heard in years. A key, brass old, heavy in a way that modern keys never are. Tied to it with a piece of twine was a paper tag, soft at the edges like it had been touched 1,000 times, and on that tag, in small careful loops of faded blue ink, was a single number. 117, that was all. No letter, no card. Not even my name except on the front of the envelope. Here's the thing nobody tells you about 9 years of marriage. You don't just learn a person's face. You learn their handwriting the way you learn a song you can't get out of your head. The slope of it. The way the sevens get a little line through the middle. The tiny hesitation at the start of every number, like the pen is taking a breath before it begins. I knew that handwriting before my brain even finished the thought. Whitney, my hands went cold. Not from the rain. From the silence, 6 years of it, suddenly standing in my kitchen, wearing a piece of twine. I want you to understand what that silence was made of. So let me take you back. Whitney and I met in a college laundry room. Fighting over the last working dryer, she gave it to me. Then she hopped up onto the folding table and talked to me for 2 hours while my socks went around and around, and somewhere in those 2 hours my whole life quietly changed direction without asking my permission. She was the kind of person who remembered the name of every waiter, who cried at dog food commercials and then laughed at herself for crying, who kept a list on her phone titled "Baby Names Do Not Lose." That list was not a joke. More than anything in this world, Whitney wanted to be a mom. We tried for years, doctors with kind eyes and bad news, calendars covered in circles. Hope, then heartbreak, then hope again, a tide that wears a person down one grain at a time. And then in our 8th year it finally happened. 2 pink lines. I have never in my life heard a human being scream with joy the way Whitney screamed in our bathroom that morning. She came running out holding that little test like it was made of glass. For 19 weeks our house was the happiest place on earth. She talked to her belly while she stirred the soup. She sang, badly, beautifully, off-key, and I pretended to complain just to watch her throw a dish towel at me. We painted a swatch of soft yellow on the spare room wall, because we didn't want to find out if it was a boy or a girl. We just wanted them. At 19 weeks we lost the baby. I'm not going to walk you through that night. Some of you watching have lived your own version of it, and you don't need me to hand you the details. For everyone else, just understand this. There is a particular kind of quiet that moves into a house after a thing like that. It doesn't knock, it just moves in, and it never ever leaves on its own. And this is where I failed her. Not loudly, not cruelly. I failed her in the most ordinary, most forgivable-looking way a man can fail his wife. 3 days later I went back to work. Not because I didn't care. Because I didn't know what to do with my hands. Because grief terrified me and spreadsheets didn't. Because somewhere deep down I believed that if I stayed steady and quiet and strong, I was holding our family up off the floor. I never cried in front of her. Not once. I actually thought that was strength. And Whitney watched me leave for work and come home and answer emails and mow the lawn. And she came to a quiet, devastating conclusion that would slowly end our marriage. He's already over it. She went dim, not angry. Dim like a lamp turned down low that never comes back up. A year later, she set a stack of papers on the kitchen table, right next to my coffee mug, and she said the only thing she ever said about any of it. I can't keep grieving next to someone who's already finished. I didn't fight her. I think some part of me believed I had it coming. She moved to Vermont. I stayed in Ohio. And the silence between us became total. No calls, no texts, not even a rumor carried by an old friend. I told myself she'd remarried. I told myself she was happy. I told myself she never thought about me at all. Then the key showed up on my counter. And every single one of those things I'd told myself began to crack down the middle. That first night, I did what frightened men do best. I pretended it was nothing. A mistake, I decided. A wrong address. Some stranger's spare key that had wandered into the wrong box. I set it down next to the fruit bowl and went on with my evening. I cooked a dinner I didn't taste. I watched a show I couldn't have described to you 5 minutes later. But the key just sat there in the corner of my eye. And I'm telling you, an object that small has no business being that loud. At 2 in the morning I was standing in my dark kitchen in my socks, holding it up under the little light over the stove. 117. Those careful loops and the twine, tied in a double knot. Whitney tied double knots on everything, shoelaces, garbage bags, gift ribbons. Because her father taught her when she was a girl that 1 knot is just a suggestion, 2 is a promise. And that's the exact moment I stopped breathing for a second. Because I understood, standing there at 2 a.m., that this was not a mistake, and it was not a stranger's, and it was not nothing. It was a message. From a woman who hadn't spoken to me in 6 years. I just couldn't read it yet. Day 2, I woke up on the couch with the key still in my fist. I hadn't meant to fall asleep holding it, but there it was, pressed into my palm so hard it had left a mark, a little brass ghost printed in my skin. I sat up, and the first thing my eyes found was the envelope on the coffee table, and the smudged gray postmark that had been whispering to me all night. Burlington, Vermont. I had never been to Burlington, Vermont. I had never been anywhere in Vermont. But Whitney had moved there after the divorce. That was the last scrap of information I ever got about her life. Passed along by her cousin at a funeral 4 years ago, said quickly, like contraband. She's up in Vermont now. She's doing okay. That was it. That was everything I knew about 6 years of her life. 5 words and a state. And now the state was writing back. I made coffee I didn't drink, and sat down at my kitchen table like a man reporting for a job he never applied for. I laid it all out in front of me, evidence style. The envelope, the tissue paper, the twine, the key, the tag 117. Okay, Whitney, talk to me. It wasn't a house key. Wrong shape entirely. House keys are thin, light, mass-produced. This thing had weight, history. It wasn't a car key, obviously. Too big for a mailbox key, too plain for a safe deposit box. Those are stubby little things, and banks don't let you mail them around with twine on them anyway. It looked institutional. That's the word that kept circling my head. Like the keys that hung on a pegboard in my grandfather's machine shop when I was a kid. Rows of them, brass and worn. Every key married to a number. Every number married to a door, a locker, a unit. A numbered door somewhere in or around Burlington, Vermont, with 6 years of silence sitting behind it. So I did the only thing a man with a phone and a guilty heart can do. I started calling. You want to know how many self-storage facilities there are within 30 miles of Burlington, Vermont? More than you'd ever guess. I made a list off my laptop, 14 places long, and I started at the top with my heart hammering like I was asking someone to prom. The first call, I learned the script everyone was going to read me. Green Valley Storage, this is Tina. Hi. This is going to sound strange. My name is Daniel Carver, and I received a key in the mail, a unit key, number 117, and I think it might be from your facility. Sir, we can't release any renter information over the phone. I understand. I just need to know if... Privacy policy, sir. Sorry. Click. The second place had a unit 117, and for about 9 seconds my whole body lit up like a switchboard. And then the man said it belonged to a plumbing company that had rented it since 2011, and the light went back out. The third place didn't number their units past 90. The fourth put me on hold for 11 minutes and then disconnected me, and I just sat there listening to the dial tone like it owed me an apology. By noon I had crossed 6 names off my list. By 3 o'clock 10. My legal pad looked like a battlefield, numbers slashed out, notes scrawled sideways, the word no, written so many times it stopped looking like a word. And somewhere around the 11th call, something shifted in me, and I need to be honest with you about what it was. It stopped being curiosity, it became fear. because a new thought had crawled into the room and sat down across from me, and it would not leave. What if I'm too late? I didn't even know what I'd be too late for. That's the thing about a message with no words. Your own heart fills in the blanks, and my heart was filling them in with every dark thing it could find. Was she sick? Was this the kind of package people send when they're putting their affairs in order? Was a lawyer going to call me next? I'm not proud of where my mind went, but 6 years of silence doesn't break for no reason. Silence like that only breaks when something bigger breaks first. Call 12. No. Call 13. No. And then there was one name left on the list. A small, family-run place out on the edge of town, the kind that doesn't come up first in any search because they've never needed to advertise. Green Mountain Self-Storage. It was 6:42 p.m. when I called. Their office had closed at 6. I stood in my kitchen listening to that phone ring into nothing, watching the last daylight slide off the counter, and when the voicemail beep feasibly came, I had a whole professional full-little speech prepared. Name, number, reason for calling, businesslike, calm. That is not what came out. What came out after my name and number was one sentence I had not planned and could not stop. I think my ex-wife left something there for me. And then I hung up, and I slid down against the kitchen cabinets until I was sitting on the floor, actually sitting on the kitchen floor, 38 years old, in my socks, out of phone numbers, out of ideas, holding a brass key against my forehead like it could transmit something if I just pressed hard enough. That was the lowest hour of the whole 3 days. I want you to remember it, because of what happened next. Day 3, 9:14 in the morning. I was standing at a sink when my phone lit up with an area code I'd been staring at for 2 days. Vermont. My pulse went off like a fire alarm in an empty building. I let it ring twice because I didn't trust my voice, and then I answered. Is this Daniel? Yes, this is Daniel Carver. Mr. Carver, my name's Carol. I'm the office manager out at Green Mountain. I got your message last night. A pause, papers shuffling, and her voice. I want to describe her voice to you, because it mattered. It was the voice of a woman who has worked the front desk of a storage facility for decades, which means it was the voice of a woman who has seen every kind of human story walk through a gate. Divorces, deaths, fresh starts, last resorts. Storage facilities are where people put the things they can't live with and can't live without. Carol had heard it all, and even so, even with all of that in her voice, there was something careful in it that morning, something gentle, like she already knew she was holding a live wire. You said Unit 117s, she said. Yes, ma'am, and you said your name is Carver. That's right. There was a pause then, a long one, the kind of pause that has weight, that you can feel leaning on the line. And then Carol said the sentence that knocked the wind clean out of me. Unit 117 is registered to a Whitney Carver. Carver. I had to put a hand on the counter. I want you to understand what that one word did to me. Whitney had her own name. A good name. Her family's name, and every assumption lesson I'd built over 6 years said she'd taken it back the minute the ink dried. Scrubbed me off her life like a sticker off a windshield. She'd vanished, she'd gone silent, she'd started over, and she had kept my name. 6 years. No calls, no letters, not one word. And she had kept my name. Mr. Carver, you still with me? I'm here, I said, and my voice came out about 10 years younger than I am. There's a few things in this file, Carol said slowly, that I think you're going to want to know. And then she read them to me, one by one, and every single detail landed like a stone dropped down a well. The unit was rented 6 years and 1 month ago. I did the math while she was still talking, and the math made my skin go cold. 6 years and 1 month ago was the month our divorce was finalized. Not the same season, not the same window, practically the same week. While I was sitting in an empty house in Ohio, convincing myself she'd already forgotten me, Whitney was standing in a storage office in Vermont renting a numbered door. Paid in full, Carol said. 6 years. Up front in cash. 6 years up front. People don't do that. Nobody does that. You pay month to month, you set up an auto draft, you forget about it. You only pay 6 years in advance for one reason, because you've decided on day one exactly how long something needs to be kept safe, and you don't trust your future self to keep paying for it. It wasn't storage. It was a time capsule with a countdown. Whitney had set a clock running on the same week she signed away our marriage. And then Carol told me the part that explained why the key had come now. Mr. Carver, the contract expires this Friday. After that, by law, contents of expired units get cleared out and go to auction. This Friday, it was Thursday morning, everything snapped into focus at once, like a picture coming out of fog. The key hadn't come now by coincidence. It hadn't come now because Whitney woke up one day feeling sentimental. It came now because now was almost too late. The clock she'd wound 6 years ago was on its final turn. Whatever was behind door 117. In less than 48 hours, strangers were going to roll that door up, paw through it, price it, and sell it to the highest bidder like it was nothing. And Whitney could not let that happen. But she also, for some reason I didn't understand yet, could not stop it herself. So she mailed the clock to me. "Can I get in?" I asked. And I was already moving, already pulling open the closet for a jacket. "I'm not on the account. I'm not legally, I'm nobody to her anymore. Is there any way?" And here Carol went quiet again. I heard a file folder open. I heard paper, and when she spoke, her voice had changed, gone soft and careful, the way people talk in hospital hallways. "That's the strange thing," she said. "There's a note in this file, handwritten. It's been in here since the day she rented the unit. I remember her now, you know. Quiet woman, polite. Paid in cash and tied the receipt up in her purse with a little double knot," I said. "Yes," Carol said, startled. "A double knot. How did you?" "What does the note say, Carol?" And she read it to me, slowly, word for word. A note written 6 years ago, in small, careful loops of blue ink, by a woman signing away her marriage in the same week. "If anyone ever comes asking about this unit with a key, let them in. No questions." I didn't say anything for a long moment. I couldn't. Because do you understand what that note meant? It meant that 6 years ago, before the silence, before Vermont swallowed her up, before I'd even finished moving my things out of our house, Whitney had stood at that counter and planned for this exact morning. She knew. She knew that one day when the clock ran out, she would mail a key with no note, and someone would come asking. She didn't write my name on it, because maybe she couldn't be sure I'd still be at the same address, still be alive, still care. But she knew if anyone ever came, it would be me. Who else could it be? She had left a door unlocked for me 6 years in advance, and then she'd spent 6 years not telling me it existed. "Mr. Carver," Carol said gently, "we're open until 6 tonight and 8 to 5 tomorrow. How far away are you?" I looked at the clock. I looked at the key. 11 hours, I said. "I'm leaving now. I didn't pack a bag. I want that on the record. People in movies pack bags." I grabbed my wallet, my phone charger, a jacket, and her key. And I was on the interstate before I'd even fully decided anything, doing the speed limit plus exactly as much as I figured I could talk my way out of. Ohio fell away behind me. Pennsylvania came and went in rain. Somewhere in New York, the rain quit, and the sky went the color of an old bruise, and then dark, and I just kept driving with the radio off. Because every song felt like it was about her, and I drove in silence instead, which was worse, because the silence was definitely about her. 11 hours is a long time to be alone with a question. I rehearsed 100 guesses against that windshield, and I'm going to list them for you, because I want you to see how wrong a man can be. I guessed money, some account, some inheritance. Something legal, she'd been forced to split with me. I guessed documents, secrets about the divorce, something she'd hidden from the lawyers. I guessed my own belongings, boxes of my things she'd taken by accident and been too proud to return. Around hour 7 in the dark, I guessed darker things. Evidence of an affair, proof of some secret life, something she'd done that she needed me, of all people, to be the one to find. Remember every guess I just gave you, every one, because every single one of them was wrong, and the truth was so much heavier than all of them put together. Somewhere around hour 9, crossing into Vermont in the last black hours before dawn, the mountains rose up on both sides of the highway like sleeping animals, and I finally let myself ask the real question, the one underneath all the others, the one I'd been driving away from for 11 hours and 6 years. What if whatever is behind that door is about us? I stopped once at an all-night gas station outside Montpelier, and I caught my reflection in the glass of the coffee machine, unshaven, wild-eyed, a man who'd driven all night on a clue from a ghost, and I almost laughed. Almost. The kid behind the register asked if I was headed somewhere good. "I honestly don't know," I told him, and it was the truest thing I'd said all week. Green Mountain Self-Storage sat under a gray morning sky just off a 2-lane road, with mist coming down off the hills and pooling between the buildings, long rows of orange roll-up doors, all identical, all silent, like a street where every house is keeping the same secret. Carol was waiting at the office. I knew her the second I saw her, 60-something, cardigan, reading glasses on a chain, eyes that had already done all their judging years ago and retired from it. She didn't make me show ID. She didn't make small talk. She looked at me for one long second, the way you look at a person who is about to learn something, and then she picked up a clipboard she didn't need and said, "I'll walk you down myself." We went down the row in the mist, our footsteps the only sound in the world. 111, 113, 115, and then we were standing in front of it. 117. An orange roll-up door exactly like all the others, except that it wasn't like any other door on earth, because behind this one was 6 years of my ex-wife's silence, and 40-some hours from now it would have belonged to strangers. Carol touched my shoulder once, just once, light as a leaf, and stepped back to give me room. I took the key out of my pocket. The brass had gone warm from riding against my leg for 11 hours. Little Twas turned slow in its twine at 1:17 in her handwriting. A double knot. A promise. My hand was shaking so badly I missed the lock on the first try. The key scraped against the steel, and my breath came out ragged and white in the cold morning air, and I steadied my right hand with my left like a man diffused something. The second time, the key slid in like it had been waiting 6 years for exactly this. I turned it. The tumblers gave way with a sound I will hear for the rest of my life. Heavy, final, certain. A deep metal click, like a held breath being let go at last. And then I gripped the bottom of that orange door, and I rolled it up. The door rolled up, and the smell reached me before my eyes could make sense of anything. Cedar, dust, and underneath it, impossibly faintly, lavender, her lavender, the soap she used for 9 years, the scent that used to live in the collar of her sweaters. 6 years sealed inside a metal box in the Vermont cold, and somehow it was still there, waiting, the way a song waits in a room after the radio's been turned off. My knees nearly went. I had to grab the edge of the door. Because there, in the gray morning light spilling into that little concrete room, standing alone in the center of an almost empty space like something on an altar, was a crib, a white crib, still in its factory box, never opened, never built. I stood in the doorway and I could not move. Beside the crib was a wooden rocking chair, and I knew that chair. It was her grandmother's, the one Whitney used to run her hand along when we visited, the one she said, more than once with that soft, faraway smile, "I'm going to rock our babies in this someday." It had been in her grandmother's house the last time I saw it. Now it was here, facing the back wall, and draped over the back of that chair was a quilt, yellow hand-sewn, covered in tiny embroidered ducks, each one a little crooked, each one stitched by a hand that was learning as it went. I had never seen that quilt before in my life, which meant she had made it by hand, stitch by stitch, after the yellow swatch on the nursery wall, after the 19 weeks, after the night neither of us ever spoke about again, somewhere in the years supposedly forgetting me. Whitney had sat alone in a quiet room and sewn a blanket, one duck at a time, for a baby who never came home. I made it 3 steps into that unit before my legs simply stopped working, and I sat down hard on the cold concrete floor, and that's when I saw the shelf. Along the side wall, a single wooden shelf, and on it, lined up in a neat, careful row, 6 shoeboxes, each one labeled on the end in that handwriting I'd have known in the dark in my sleep. At the bottom of the ocean, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, year 6. My hands weren't really mine anymore as I reached up and lifted down the box marked year 1. I took off the lid. Letters. The box was full of letters, envelopes, a stack of them held together with, of course, a piece of twine in a double knot. I counted them later. 12. One for every month of that first year, and every single envelope was addressed in the same careful loops to the same person, to our baby. I want to tell you I held it together. I didn't. I sat on the floor of Unit 117, and I read them, all of them. I went back and lifted down year 2 and year 3, all 6 boxes, 72 letters in all, and I read every word. And it took me the better part of 4 hours, and partway through, the motion light on the ceiling clicked off, because I'd been too still for too long, and I had to wave one arm in the dark to bring it back. And then I just kept reading. She wrote to our child every month for 6 years. She wrote about the leaves. It's October now. You would have been born in October. The maples out here turn a red I don't have a word for. I keep wanting to show you. She wrote about a song. I heard a lullaby in the grocery store today, and I had to leave my whole cart in the aisle and sit in the car. Your daddy would have laughed at me. The good kind of laugh. She wrote about the chair. I set the rocking chair facing the window so you'd have a view. I know that doesn't make sense. I do a lot of things now that don't make sense. And then, woven through all of it, year after year, I started finding the other things she wrote about. Me. In a letter from that first year, written in shakier ink than the rest. Your daddy went back to work 3 days after we lost you. 3 days I hated him for it. I hated that he could put on a tie when I couldn't put on my own shoes. I had to stop reading. I had to set the box down and put my face in my hands. Because there it was, The divorce, the whole divorce, in 2 sentences. She'd watched me knot my tie, and she'd read it as he's fine. When the truth was, I knotted that tie because it was the only thing in the world I still knew how to do. But she didn't stop there, because the letters went on for 6 years, and people grow in 6 years, even alone, especially alone. A letter from year 4. I think I was wrong about your daddy. I've had a lot of quiet to think in. I don't think he was over it. I think he was drowning, same as me. And I was so busy going under that I couldn't tell the difference between a man who didn't care and a man who didn't know how to cry where I could see him. Carver men only sink in private. His own father was the same. I knew that. I should have remembered that. And a letter from year 5. Just one line that undid me completely. I miss him. I'm allowed to say that here, because you're the only one who'll ever read it. I miss your daddy every single day. She knew. Somewhere in the silence, in the quiet of these mountains, Whitney had figured out the truth about us that I'd been too frozen to ever say out loud, that we hadn't stopped loving each other. We'd just been two people drowning side by side, each one too far under to reach the other, each one mistaking the other's silence for not caring. And then I lifted the lid off the last box, year 6, 11 letters to the baby, and a 12th envelope, sitting apart from the others, a different color, thicker. This one was not addressed to our baby. This one said in her handwriting, the first time I'd seen my own name in her hand in 6 years. Daniel. I held that envelope for a long, long time before I could open it. My hands were steady now. Strange. After everything, my hands had finally gone still, and I opened it, and I read it. And I'm going to give it to you exactly as she wrote it, because every word of it is carved into me now and always will be. Daniel, if you're reading this, the contract is nearly run out, and I couldn't let strangers roll up that door and clear this room like it was nothing, like she was nothing. But I couldn't face you either. I'm sorry for both of those things. I know that's a coward's apology. It's the only kind I had the courage to leave. I don't know anymore if leaving was the right thing. I only know that back then I couldn't keep grieving next to a man I thought was already finished. It took me years and 1,000 miles to understand you weren't finished at all. You were grieving in a language I never learned to read. That was my blindness, not your coldness. I'm sorry it took me a whole life to see it. I'm not asking you to find me. I'm not asking you for anything. I just needed one person on this earth to know this room was real, that she was real, that for 19 weeks, the 3 of us were a family, and that I never, not for one single day, forgot. Take the quilt if you want it. I told myself I made it for her. But I think somewhere in all these years I might have been making it for you. Everything else you can let go. She was real. For 6 years I had carried our loss like a stone I wasn't even allowed to look at. And the whole time, 11 hours up the highway, there was a room where our daughter was loved out loud, on paper, on the 15th of every month. Because the 15th was the day we lost her, and Whitney never once missed it. She hadn't run from our grief. She'd built it a home with her own 2 hands. She'd just had to build it alone. Because I never once let her believe I'd help carry the weight. I sat there until the gold of full morning came through the open door and lit up the whole little room. The crib, the chair, the empty shelf, the quilt with its crooked ducks, and then I did what she asked. Most of it I left the crib. I left her grandmother's chair. I left 71 of the 72 letters, boxed and labeled, for the facility to handle gently. Carol promised me they would, and I believed her. I took 2 things out of Unit 117. The quilt, folded so carefully the ducks turned inward, riding home in the passenger seat like someone I was finally bringing back, and the letter with my name on it. But here is where I broke Whitney's rule, because she told me not to find her, and I want you to understand, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to honor someone's fear. Before I left, I asked Carol one question. 6 years ago, when Whitney rented that unit, and paid in cash and tied her receipt in a double knot, had she left an address on the account? Carol looked at me for a long moment. Then she looked down at the file in her hands. Then she did a thing I'll be grateful for until the day I die. She turned the file around on the counter so it was facing me, and she said, "I'm going to go make some coffee in the back. Take however long you need." And she walked away. There was an address, 2 towns over. I did not drive 11 hours home that day. I drove 20 minutes. It was a small white house at the end of a dirt lane, with a garden gone a little wild and a wind chime made of old keys turning in the breeze. I sat in my car in front of it for 45 minutes. I am not ashamed to tell you that a grown man sat in a parked car holding a yellow quilt and could not make his legs work. And then the front door opened on its own, because she'd seen the strange car, because of course she had. And Whitney stepped out onto the porch in a gray sweater, 6 years older, her hair shorter, a dish towel still in her hand like no time had passed at all. She saw the car, she saw me through the windshield, and she went absolutely still. I got out. I didn't have a speech. 11 hours and 20 minutes of driving, and I had no words at all. So I just lifted up the only thing I had. I held up the quilt, and across that wild little garden, with the key chimes turning in the wind, I watched my ex-wife's hand come up to her mouth, and I watched 6 years of silence break apart on her face all at once. And she said one word, my name Daniel, in a voice that cracked straight down the middle. I crossed the garden. I didn't run. I just walked to her the way you walk towards something you're afraid will vanish. And when I reached the bottom of the porch steps, I said the only true thing left in me. I wasn't finished, I told her. I was never finished. I just didn't know how to cry where you could see me. And I am so sorry it took me this long to come and say it out loud. And Whitney came down those steps and put her arms around me, quilt and all. And we stood in her overgrown garden and cried. Both of us, finally. At the same time, in the same place, out loud, where the other ones could see. For the daughter we lost, and the years we lost, and the love that, it turned out, neither of us had ever actually managed to lose at all. We're not pretending the 6 years didn't happen. You don't get to skip the scar. You just decide whether you heal around it together or apart. We're taking it slow. Coffee on her porch. Long walks where we say the things we never said. She kept the rocking chair after all. It's in her living room now, facing the window, with the quilt folded over the back. And sometimes we just sit near it, not talking, and that quiet is a completely different kind of quiet than the one that ended us. This one isn't empty. This one is full. Because here is what Unit 117 taught me, and I'll give it to you for nothing. Silence is never empty. For 6 years I believed Whitney's silence meant she'd forgotten me. That silence turned out to be the loudest love letter anyone has ever written. It just took a brass key, 11 hours of dark highway, and 72 letters on a concrete floor for me to finally learn how to read it. So before I go, let me leave you with the question that's been sitting on my chest ever since that door rolled up, the one I want you to carry out of here with you. Is there someone in your life right now whose silence you've been reading all wrong? Someone who isn't cold, but is just grieving or loving or breaking in a language you never learned to read? And if there is, what are you waiting for? Because I almost waited too long. The door was 40 hours from being sold to strangers. Don't wait for a key in the mail. Go and turn yours today. Tell me about that person in the comments. Tell me who you're going to call. I read every single one, because every one of you is somebody's unopened letter too. Drive safe out there. And go find your people while the door is still unlocked.